The complete story of Emma Chen, a 25-year mystery solved by DNA. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Emma Chen was born on March 12, 1979, in Portland, Oregon, to parents who had immigrated to the United States from Taiwan just 3 years earlier. David and Lynn Chen arrived in America with little more than hope and determination, carrying dreams of building a better life for the family they planned to start. David had been an accountant in Taipei, but his credentials weren't recognized in the United States. Lynn had worked as a nurse, but faced similar challenges with licensing and language barriers. Undeterred by these obstacles, David and Lynn pooled their savings and opened a small family restaurant called Golden Dragon in southeast Portland. The restaurant occupied a modest storefront in a diverse neighborhood, serving authentic Taiwanese cuisine to a community hungry for genuine flavors from home. David worked as the cook, having learned traditional recipes from his mother and grandmother, while Lynn managed the front of house, gradually improving her English through daily interactions with customers. The early years were incredibly challenging. David and Lynn worked 16-hour days, 7 days a week, with no vacations and barely any time off. They lived in a tiny apartment above the restaurant, and every dollar they earned went either back into the business or into a college fund for the children they hoped to have. Their dedication began to pay off as the restaurant slowly built a loyal customer base, drawn not only by the authentic food but by the warmth and hospitality of the Chen family. Emma was their first child, born after 5 years of marriage and 3 years of trying to conceive. From the moment she arrived, she became the center of her parents' universe and the driving force behind their relentless work ethic. David would often be found in the early morning hours, before the restaurant opened, holding baby Emma while reviewing supplier invoices and menu plans. Lynn would carry Emma in a bassinet behind the counter, caring for her between serving customers and managing the cash register. When Emma was 3 years old, the Chens welcomed their second child, a son named Michael. Unlike Emma's smooth birth, Michael's arrival was complicated by a serious congenital heart condition that required immediate surgery and months of intensive medical care. The medical bills were staggering, but the experience also gave the Chen family a profound appreciation for the doctors and nurses who saved Michael's life. It was during this time that young Emma, despite her age, seemed to understand the gravity of the situation and would often be found playing doctor with her dolls, carefully listening to their heartbeats with a toy stethoscope. As Emma grew older, it became clear that she had inherited her parents' intelligence and work ethic, but she also possessed a natural compassion that set her apart. She excelled in school from kindergarten onward, consistently earning top grades while also showing remarkable empathy for classmates who struggled. Teachers frequently commented on Emma's ability to help other students without making them feel inadequate, a skill that suggested she might have a future in teaching or healthcare. The Chen family's financial situation gradually improved as the restaurant became more successful, but David and Lynn never forgot their humble beginnings. They continued to live modestly, funneling most of their profits into savings for their children's education. By the time Emma reached middle school, they had saved enough to move to a better neighborhood with higher-rated schools, though they kept the apartment above the restaurant as a backup plan. Emma's academic excellence continued through middle and high school. She took advanced placement courses in biology, chemistry, physics, and mathematics, while also participating in the debate team and volunteering at a local animal shelter. Her guidance counselor, Mrs. Patricia Williams, later recalled that Emma was one of the most focused and determined students she had ever encountered. Emma had decided by age 14 that she wanted to become a pediatric surgeon, inspired by the doctors who had saved her brother Michael's life. During her junior year of high school, Emma began taking college-level courses at a nearby community college to supplement her high school curriculum. She scored 1580 out of 1,600 on her SATs and graduated as valedictorian of her high school class with a perfect 4.0 GPA. Her valedictory speech focused on the importance of service to others and the responsibility that comes with privilege and opportunity. Emma's academic achievements earned her a full scholarship to Pacific Northwest University, a prestigious institution known for its pre-medical program. The scholarship covered not only tuition but also room and board, which was crucial for the Chen family's finances. David and Lynn were immensely proud, seeing their daughter's success as validation of their sacrifices and hard work. Pacific Northwest University was located about 2 hours from Portland, in a picturesque college town surrounded by forests and mountains. The campus was known for its beautiful architecture, combining traditional collegiate Gothic buildings with modern facilities. Emma arrived as a freshman in the fall of 1997, moving into Harrison Hall, a coeducational dormitory that housed primarily first-year students. Emma's freshman year was a period of significant adjustment. Despite her academic preparation, she found college coursework more challenging than expected, particularly organic chemistry and advanced biology. However, she approached these challenges with characteristic determination, spending long hours in the library and forming study groups with classmates. Her roommate during freshman year was a student named Jennifer Martinez, who was studying engineering. The two became close friends, with Jennifer later describing Emma as someone who was incredibly studious but never competitive with others. Socially, Emma took some time to find her place on campus. She joined the Asian Student Association, where she met other students who shared similar cultural backgrounds and experiences. She also became involved in volunteer tutoring programs, helping fellow students who struggled with science courses. Despite her busy academic schedule, Emma made time for these activities because she genuinely enjoyed helping others succeed. During the spring semester of her freshman year, Emma met Marcus Thompson, a sophomore pre-med student from Seattle. Marcus was immediately impressed by Emma's intelligence and dedication, while Emma was drawn to Marcus's easygoing personality and sense of humor. They began dating casually, often studying together in the library or grabbing coffee between classes. Their relationship was serious but not exclusive, as both were focused primarily on their academic goals. As Emma's sophomore year began in fall 1998, she moved into Morrison Hall, a newer dormitory that offered more privacy and better study environments. Her new roommate was Jessica Williams, a psychology major from California. Jessica and Emma quickly became close friends, bonding over their shared commitment to academic excellence and their similar values regarding service to others. Emma's second year at Pacific Northwest University represented a time of growing confidence and achievement. She had successfully completed the most challenging prerequisite courses for medical school and had been accepted into a competitive undergraduate research program led by Dr. Sarah Matthews, a professor of molecular biology. The research program required Emma to spend additional hours in the laboratory, working on a project related to cardiac cell regeneration, a topic that held personal significance given her brother's heart condition. Emma's typical schedule during the fall of 1998 was demanding but manageable. She took 18 credit hours of coursework, including advanced organic chemistry, human anatomy and physiology, biostatistics, and medical ethics. She also worked 12 hours per week at the university library, where she helped students research academic papers and locate reference materials. Despite this busy schedule, Emma maintained her 4.0 GPA and continued to volunteer with the campus tutoring center. Emma's relationship with Marcus had deepened over the summer, though both remained focused on their individual goals. Marcus was preparing for the MCAT exam and planning to apply to medical school the following year. Emma planned to take the MCAT during her junior year and apply to medical schools during her senior year. They often discussed their future plans, including the possibility of attending the same medical school and eventually working in related fields. The Chen family remained close despite the physical distance. Emma called her parents every Sunday evening, updating them on her academic progress and campus activities. David and Lynn had expanded their restaurant to include catering services, which had significantly improved their financial situation. They were proud that they could now afford to send Emma spending money each month, though she rarely used it, preferring to maintain her part-time job for both financial independence and work experience. Emma's younger brother Michael, now 15 years old and fully recovered from his childhood heart condition, was following in his sister's academic footsteps. He was an honor student in high school and had expressed interest in becoming a biomedical engineer. Emma served as his mentor and study partner whenever she was home, helping him with advanced mathematics and science courses. October 1998 was an especially exciting time for Emma. She had just received notification that her research project had been selected for presentation at the National Undergraduate Research Conference, scheduled for the following spring. Dr. Matthews had praised Emma's work as exceptionally sophisticated for an undergraduate student and had suggested that Emma might consider pursuing combined MD-PhD programs rather than just medical school. Emma's daily routine during this period was highly structured. She typically woke at 6:00 a.m., spent an hour reviewing her notes from the previous day, and then attended her morning classes. After lunch, she would either work at the library or spend time in the research laboratory. Evenings were reserved for homework, additional studying, and maintaining her social relationships with Jessica, Marcus, and other friends. The week of October 12, 1998, began normally for Emma. She attended all her classes, completed her library shifts, and spent extra time in the laboratory preparing cultures for her research project. On Monday evening, she had dinner with Marcus and several other pre-med students at the campus dining hall. Tuesday was spent primarily in the library, both working her regular shift and studying for an upcoming biostatistics exam. Wednesday included her anatomy lab, where she was working on identifying cardiac muscle structures, work that she found particularly meaningful given her interest in pediatric cardiology. Thursday, October 15, 1998, started like any other day in Emma's carefully structured routine. She woke at 6 a.m. in her dorm room in Morrison Hall, which she shared with her roommate Jessica Williams. Emma's side of the room was meticulously organized, with her textbooks arranged by subject and her class schedule posted prominently on the wall above her desk. She began each day by reviewing her handwritten notes from the previous day's classes, a habit she had developed to reinforce her learning and identify any concepts that needed additional attention. Emma's first class that Thursday was Introduction to Molecular Biology at 8 a.m., taught by Professor David Richardson in the Science Building. The lecture covered protein synthesis and gene expression, topics that Emma found fascinating due to their relevance to her research project. She sat in her usual seat in the third row, taking detailed notes in her distinctive, neat handwriting. Several classmates later remembered Emma asking insightful questions about the relationship between genetic mutations and congenital heart defects. After molecular biology, Emma had a brief break before her 10:00 a.m. advanced organic chemistry class with Professor Linda Chang. This was considered one of the most challenging courses in the pre-med curriculum, with a reputation for weeding out students who weren't truly committed to medical school. Emma had been earning grades in the class, but she never took this success for granted. She spent the break between classes reviewing her organic chemistry notes and working through practice problems. The organic chemistry lecture that day focused on reaction mechanisms involving aromatic compounds. Emma worked carefully through each example, drawing detailed molecular structures in her notebook and noting the conditions required for each type of reaction. Her lab partner, David Kim, later recalled that Emma seemed particularly engaged that day, asking Professor Chang about potential applications of these reactions in pharmaceutical development. Emma's third and final class of the day was Medical Ethics, which met from 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. This course, taught by Professor Robert Martinez, explored the complex moral and philosophical questions that physicians face in their practice. The topic that day was informed consent, particularly as it applied to pediatric patients. Emma participated actively in the class discussion, drawing on her volunteer experience with children and her understanding of the doctor-patient relationship from her brother's medical treatment. After her classes ended, Emma walked back to Morrison Hall to drop off her books and grab a quick lunch. She had prepared a sandwich the night before and ate it while reviewing her research notes. At 3 p.m., she headed to her part-time job at the university library, where she worked at the reference desk helping students locate materials for their research projects. Emma's supervisor at the library, Mrs. Helen Rodriguez, later described Emma as one of the most reliable and helpful student employees she had ever supervised. Emma had an encyclopedic knowledge of the library's resources and a genuine enthusiasm for helping other students succeed in their research. That Thursday afternoon, Emma helped a struggling freshman locate sources for a history paper, assisted a graduate student in finding specialized medical journals, and updated the library's database of new acquisitions. During her 4-hour library shift, Emma also managed to complete some of her own homework between helping students. She worked on problem sets for her biostatistics class and reviewed her notes for the upcoming anatomy exam. Her ability to multitask effectively while maintaining her helpful, patient demeanor with library patrons was something that impressed both her supervisor and her coworkers. Emma's library shift ended at 7:00 p.m., and she walked back to Morrison Hall as the sun was beginning to set. The campus was beautiful in the early autumn, with leaves just starting to change colors and a crisp coolness in the air. Emma loved this time of year and often took slightly longer routes across campus to enjoy the scenery and clear her mind after intense study sessions. When Emma returned to her dorm room, she found her roommate Jessica getting ready to go out for dinner. Jessica was dating a student named Ryan Peters, and the four of them, Emma, Jessica, Marcus, and Ryan, often went out together as a group. However, that evening Marcus was studying for an important exam and couldn't join them. Instead, Emma, Jessica, and two other friends, Sarah Mitchell and Kelly O'Brien, had planned to have dinner at Tony's Pizza, a popular restaurant just off campus. Tony's Pizza was a beloved institution among Pacific Northwest University students, known for its generous portions, affordable prices, and casual atmosphere. The restaurant occupied a converted house about 3/4 of a mile from campus, and the walk there was considered part of the experience. Emma had been there many times before and was familiar with the route, which took her down University Avenue, the main street connecting the campus to the surrounding college town. Emma told Jessica that she wanted to take a quick shower and change clothes before dinner. She had been wearing jeans and a sweater to class, but wanted to put on something a little nicer for their evening out. Jessica was already dressed and ready to go, wearing a blue dress and light jacket. They agreed to meet at Tony's Pizza at 7:30 p.m., which would give Emma enough time to get ready and make the 15-minute walk to the restaurant. After Jessica left for the restaurant, Emma spent about 10 minutes selecting her outfit. She chose a red Pacific Northwest University sweatshirt that her parents had bought for her during Parents' Weekend, along with her favorite pair of blue jeans and white Nike sneakers. The sweatshirt was particularly meaningful to Emma because it represented her parents' pride in her academic achievements and their support for her educational journey. Emma gathered her belongings for the evening, placing her wallet, student ID, keys, and $30 in cash into her brown leather backpack. The backpack was another gift from her parents, purchased specifically for college and carefully selected for its durability and professional appearance. Emma also included a small notebook and pen, as she often liked to jot down thoughts or ideas that occurred to her during social activities. At exactly 7:15 p.m., Emma left Morrison Hall and began walking toward Tony's Pizza. The route was familiar and well-traveled, taking her down University Avenue past several other dormitories, the campus bookstore, and various student-oriented businesses. The sidewalks were well-lit and generally considered safe, with regular foot traffic from other students walking to and from campus activities. Emma's usual route to Tony's Pizza took her past 3 security cameras that had been installed by the university as part of a campus safety initiative. The first camera was located outside Morrison Hall and monitored the main entrance to the dormitory. The second camera was positioned at the intersection of University Avenue and College Street, approximately halfway between the campus and Tony's Pizza. The third camera was located near the restaurant itself, providing surveillance of the commercial district. Multiple witnesses later confirmed seeing Emma walking along University Avenue that evening. Jennifer Walsh, a junior studying English literature, was walking in the opposite direction and waved to Emma as they passed each other. Jennifer later told police that Emma appeared normal and happy, walking at her usual brisk pace. Thomas Chen, no relation to Emma, a graduate student in physics, was sitting on a bench outside the campus bookstore and saw Emma walk past around 7:18 p.m. He remembered her because she was wearing the bright red university sweatshirt and because he knew her from the library where he often studied. The first security camera, outside Morrison Hall, captured clear footage of Emma leaving the dormitory at 7:17 p.m. The timestamp on the video showed Emma walking purposefully toward University Avenue, looking relaxed and comfortable. She was clearly visible in her red sweatshirt and blue jeans, carrying her brown leather backpack over her right shoulder. However, the second security camera, located at the intersection of University Avenue and College Street, never recorded Emma's image that evening. This camera was functioning properly and captured footage of other pedestrians walking past during the same time period, but Emma never appeared in its field of view. Initially, investigators thought this might indicate a technical malfunction, but careful examination of the footage revealed that the camera was working normally throughout the evening. The third security camera, near Tony's Pizza, also failed to capture any image of Emma. Like the second camera, this surveillance equipment was functioning properly and recorded other pedestrians during the relevant time period. The absence of Emma from both the second and third camera locations immediately raised concerns among investigators about what might have happened to her between Morrison Hall and the restaurant. At Tony's Pizza, Jessica Williams, Sarah Mitchell, and Kelly O'Brien waited for Emma until 8:30 p.m. Initially, they weren't particularly concerned, assuming that Emma might have been delayed by a phone call from her parents or a last-minute study session. Emma was known for her punctuality, but she was also dedicated to her academic work and would occasionally lose track of time when absorbed in her studies. As the minutes passed and Emma still hadn't arrived, Jessica became increasingly worried. At 8 p.m., she called the Morrison Hall front desk and asked them to connect her to Emma's room. The phone rang multiple times with no answer. Jessica tried calling again at 8:15 p.m. and 8:30 p.m., with the same result. She also tried calling Emma's pager, but received no response. At 8:45 p.m., Jessica, Sarah, and Kelly decided to walk back to Morrison Hall to check on Emma personally. They were concerned that she might have fallen ill or experienced some kind of emergency that prevented her from coming to dinner. The walk back to campus took them along the same route that Emma should have taken to reach the restaurant. When they arrived at Morrison Hall, Jessica used her key to enter Emma's room. The room appeared normal and undisturbed. Emma's bed was neatly made, her textbooks were stacked on her desk in their usual organized arrangement, and there were no signs of a struggle or disturbance. However, Emma's brown leather backpack was missing, as were the red sweatshirt and blue jeans she had planned to wear to dinner. Jessica immediately called campus security to report that Emma was missing. The campus security officer who took the call, Officer Mark Davidson, initially suggested that Emma might have simply forgotten about the dinner plans or decided to stay in and study. However, Jessica insisted that this was completely out of character for Emma, who was extremely reliable and would never fail to show up or call if she couldn't make it. Officer Davidson agreed to file a preliminary report and said he would check with the other dormitories to see if Emma might be visiting friends. However, as the hours passed and no trace of Emma could be found, it became clear that something serious had happened. By midnight, campus security had contacted the local police department and Emma's parents in Portland. David and Lynn Chen received the phone call about their daughter's disappearance at 12:47 a.m. on Friday, October 16. The news was devastating and completely unexpected. Emma had spoken with them just 3 days earlier, on Sunday evening, and had seemed happy and excited about her research project and her classes. There had been no indication of any problems or concerns in Emma's life. The Chens immediately drove to Pacific Northwest University, arriving at approximately 3:30 a.m. They met with campus security officers and local police, providing detailed information about Emma's habits, relationships, and mental state. David and Lynn emphasized that Emma was not the type of person who would disappear voluntarily or engage in risky behavior. She was focused on her goals, responsible in all aspects of her life, and deeply connected to her family. Detective Brian Kowalski of the University Police Department was assigned to lead the investigation into Emma's disappearance. Detective Kowalski had been with the University Police for 15 years and had handled numerous missing person cases, though most involved students who had left voluntarily due to academic pressure, relationship problems, or other personal issues. Emma's case was different from the beginning because of her exemplary academic record, stable family relationships, and responsible behavior. Detective Kowalski's first step was to conduct a thorough examination of Emma's dorm room and personal belongings. He found Emma's class notes, research materials, and personal items exactly as she had left them. Her computer showed no unusual activity, and her email accounts contained only routine correspondence with classmates, professors, and family members. There were no messages suggesting that Emma was planning to leave campus or that she was experiencing any kind of distress. The detective also interviewed Emma's roommate Jessica extensively, along with her boyfriend Marcus Thompson and her close friends Sarah Mitchell and Kelly O'Brien. All of them provided consistent accounts of Emma's behavior and mood in the days leading up to her disappearance. Everyone described Emma as happy, focused on her studies, and excited about her future plans. There had been no arguments, relationship problems, or academic difficulties that might have motivated her to leave. Marcus Thompson was particularly helpful in providing information about Emma's state of mind. He told Detective Kowalski that he and Emma had discussed their future plans just 2 days before she disappeared, including their intention to take the MCAT exam and apply to medical schools. Emma had been excited about the possibility of presenting her research at the national conference and had been making plans for the spring semester. Marcus emphasized that Emma had absolutely no reason to disappear and that her absence was completely inexplicable. Detective Kowalski also interviewed Emma's professors and co-workers at the library. Dr. Sarah Matthews, who supervised Emma's research project, described Emma as one of the most promising undergraduate researchers she had ever worked with. Emma's work was progressing excellently, and she had recently achieved a significant breakthrough in her experiments. Dr. Matthews couldn't imagine any reason why Emma would abandon her research at such a critical point. Emma's supervisor at the library, Mrs. Helen Rodriguez, provided similar testimony about Emma's dedication and reliability. Emma had never missed a scheduled work shift and had never exhibited any unusual behavior. On the afternoon of October 15, Emma had seemed normal and had even helped several students with their research projects. Mrs. Rodriguez noted that Emma had mentioned looking forward to dinner with her friends and had seemed excited about the weekend. The physical search for Emma began at dawn on Friday, October 16. Campus security, local police, and dozens of volunteer students systematically searched every building on campus, including dormitories, academic buildings, the library, recreational facilities, and maintenance areas. They also searched the surrounding area, including nearby forests, parks, and commercial districts. The search was expanded over the following days to include a wider radius around the campus. Search teams used dogs trained to detect human scent, and helicopters provided aerial surveillance of remote areas. The Willamette River, which ran near the campus, was dragged by divers looking for any sign of Emma or her belongings. Despite these extensive efforts, no trace of Emma was found during the initial search period. Detective Kowalski's investigation revealed several puzzling aspects about Emma's disappearance. The most significant mystery was why Emma never appeared on the second and third security cameras along her route to Tony's Pizza. The detective carefully reviewed the footage from both cameras and confirmed that they were functioning properly during the relevant time period. Other pedestrians were clearly visible on both cameras, but Emma was nowhere to be seen. This led Detective Kowalski to theorize that something had happened to Emma somewhere between Morrison Hall and the intersection of University Avenue and College Street. However, this area was well lit, heavily trafficked, and within sight of several businesses and dormitories. Multiple people had been in the area that evening, yet no one had seen or heard anything unusual that might explain Emma's disappearance. The detective also investigated the possibility that Emma had deviated from her usual route to Tony's Pizza. However, there was no logical reason for her to take an alternate path, and searches of other possible routes yielded no evidence of her presence. Emma was a creature of habit who typically took the most direct and familiar route to her destinations. Another puzzling aspect of the case was the complete absence of Emma's personal belongings. Her brown leather backpack, which contained her wallet, student ID, keys, and $30 in cash, was never found despite extensive searches. If Emma had been the victim of a robbery or random attack, investigators would have expected to find at least some of her belongings discarded in the area. Detective Kowalski also considered the possibility that Emma's disappearance was connected to other missing person cases in the region. However, a thorough review of similar cases revealed no clear patterns or connections. Emma's case was unique in its circumstances and appeared to be an isolated incident rather than part of a larger pattern of criminal activity. Emma's parents, David and Lynn Chen, were devastated by their daughter's disappearance but refused to give up hope. They took time off from their restaurant business and moved temporarily to the college town to assist with the search efforts. David and Lynn distributed flyers with Emma's photograph throughout the community, appeared at press conferences to appeal for information, and offered a $50,000 reward for information leading to Emma's safe return. The reward money represented the Chen's entire life savings, which they had accumulated through years of working 16-hour days at their restaurant. Despite the financial sacrifice, David and Lynn felt that no amount of money was too much if it could help bring their daughter home. The reward generated hundreds of tips from the public, but unfortunately, none of them provided credible leads about Emma's whereabouts. The media coverage of Emma's disappearance was extensive, both locally and nationally. Emma's story resonated with people across the country because she represented the American dream, the daughter of immigrants who had worked hard to build a better life and was on the verge of achieving her goals through education and dedication. The seemingly random and inexplicable nature of her disappearance made the case even more compelling to the public. Television programs including America's Most Wanted featured Emma's case, reaching millions of viewers and generating additional tips and leads. However, despite the widespread publicity and the involvement of multiple law enforcement agencies, no significant breakthroughs occurred during the first year of the investigation. As months passed without any resolution, Detective Kowalski continued to pursue every possible lead, no matter how remote. He re-interviewed witnesses multiple times, hoping that additional details might emerge from their memories. He consulted with FBI behavioral analysts to develop a psychological profile of Emma's potential abductor. He worked with technology experts to enhance the security camera footage and look for any details that might have been missed during the initial analysis. In 2020, 22 years after Emma's disappearance, the Oregon State Police launched a new cold case initiative that utilized advances in DNA technology and genetic genealogy to solve long unsolved crimes. The initiative was funded by federal grants and aimed to provide closure to families who had been waiting decades for answers about their missing loved ones. Dr. Amanda Rivera, a forensic geneticist with specialized training in genetic genealogy, was hired to lead the new cold case unit. Dr. Rivera had previously worked for private companies that used DNA analysis to solve cold cases for law enforcement agencies across the country. Her expertise in combining traditional DNA analysis with genealogical research had already led to the resolution of dozens of previously unsolvable cases. Emma Chen's case was among the first files that Dr. Rivera reviewed when she began working with the Oregon State Police. The case immediately caught her attention because of the thorough initial investigation and the complete absence of physical evidence. Dr. Rivera recognized that Emma's case represented exactly the type of mystery that might be solvable using modern DNA technology, if any biological evidence could be located. Dr. Rivera's first step was to conduct a comprehensive review of all the physical evidence that had been collected during the original investigation. She discovered that Detective Kowalski and his team had been remarkably thorough in collecting potential evidence, even items that seemed unlikely to be connected to Emma's disappearance. This included cigarette butts that had been found near the second security camera on the evening Emma disappeared. The cigarette butts had been collected because they were found in an area where smoking was prohibited and appeared to be relatively fresh. At the time of the original investigation, the cigarette butts had been tested for DNA, but no matches were found in the criminal database. However, Dr. Rivera recognized that genetic genealogy techniques might be able to identify the person who had smoked the cigarettes, even if that person had never been arrested or had their DNA entered into a criminal database. Dr. Rivera extracted DNA from the cigarette butts and confirmed that it came from a single individual who was not Emma Chen. The DNA profile was complete and of sufficient quality to be used for genetic genealogy analysis. This was encouraging news, as it provided a concrete lead that could potentially be pursued using modern investigative techniques. In early 2022, Dr. Rivera uploaded the DNA profile from the cigarette butts to GEDmatch, a public genetic genealogy database that allows law enforcement agencies to search for potential relatives of unknown DNA donors. Within a matter of weeks, the database had identified several potential genetic matches that could help identify the person who had smoked the cigarettes. Genetic genealogy is a complex and time-consuming process that involves building family trees and analyzing relationships between different individuals based on their shared DNA. Dr. Rivera worked methodically through the potential matches, using publicly available genealogical records to construct family trees and identify common ancestors. This process required hundreds of hours of careful analysis and research. After several months of genealogical research, Dr. Rivera identified a potential suspect, Robert Mitchell, who had worked as a maintenance worker for Pacific Northwest University in 1998. Mitchell's DNA profile appeared to be a close match to the unknown DNA from the cigarette butts, and his employment records showed that he had been working on campus during the time period when Emma disappeared. Robert Mitchell was 58 years old in 2022 and had been living in Las Vegas, Nevada, since 2005. A background check revealed that Mitchell had a criminal history that included arrests for burglary, assault, and drug possession, though he had never been convicted of any violent crimes against women. Mitchell had left his job at Pacific Northwest University in early 1999, just a few months after Emma's disappearance. Dr. Rivera shared her findings with Detective Sarah Johnson, who had taken over cold case investigations for the University Police Department. Detective Johnson worked with Nevada law enforcement to conduct surveillance of Mitchell and collect a DNA sample that could be used for direct comparison with the evidence from Emma's case. In March 2023, Nevada police officers approached Mitchell at his workplace and asked him to provide a voluntary DNA sample. Mitchell initially refused but eventually agreed after being told that the sample was needed to eliminate him as a suspect in a cold case investigation. The DNA sample was processed quickly, and the results confirmed that Mitchell was indeed the source of the DNA found on the cigarette butts near the security camera. Armed with this evidence, Oregon law enforcement obtained a warrant for Mitchell's arrest in connection with Emma Chen's disappearance. On March 15, 2023, exactly 24 years and 5 months after Emma disappeared, Robert Mitchell was arrested at his home in Las Vegas and extradited to Oregon to face questioning. Detective Johnson and Dr. Rivera traveled to Las Vegas to interview Mitchell after his arrest. Initially, Mitchell claimed that he had not intended to kill Emma and that her death had been accidental. However, when he realized that Emma was not breathing and had no pulse, Mitchell panicked. Rather than calling for medical assistance or reporting the incident to authorities, Mitchell made the decision to conceal what had happened and dispose of Emma's body. Mitchell's work van was parked nearby, and he used it to transport Emma's body away from the campus area. He drove to a remote forest location approximately 50 miles from the university, in an area where he had previously gone hunting and was familiar with the terrain. Mitchell buried Emma's remains in a shallow grave, along with her brown leather backpack and all of her personal belongings. After disposing of Emma's body, Mitchell returned to campus and completed his work shift as if nothing had happened. He repaired the security camera that he had disabled, cleaned up the area where the struggle had occurred, and disposed of his work clothes and tools that might have contained evidence. Mitchell's familiarity with the campus and his access to maintenance equipment allowed him to eliminate most traces of what had taken place. Mitchell kept Emma's disappearance secret for 25 years, during which time he continued working at Pacific Northwest University until early 1999. He eventually left Oregon altogether and moved to Nevada, where he found work in construction and tried to build a new life. Mitchell claimed that he was haunted by what he had done to Emma and that the guilt had contributed to his problems with alcohol and drugs over the years. However, Mitchell never came forward to confess or provide information that might have given Emma's family closure. He allowed David and Lynn Chen to suffer for decades, not knowing what had happened to their daughter or whether she might still be alive. Mitchell's decision to remain silent demonstrated a profound lack of empathy and moral responsibility that extended far beyond his original crime. After obtaining Mitchell's confession, law enforcement officials worked with him to locate Emma's burial site. In April 2023, search teams traveled to the remote forest area that Mitchell had described and began the painstaking process of locating Emma's remains. The search was complicated by the passage of 25 years and changes in the landscape, but Mitchell's detailed recollections eventually led investigators to the correct location. On April 18, 2023, search teams discovered Emma's skeletal remains in a shallow grave, exactly as Mitchell had described. Emma was still wearing her red Pacific Northwest University sweatshirt, which had been preserved by the soil conditions and the items that Mitchell had buried with her. Her brown leather backpack was also recovered, along with her wallet, student ID, keys, and the $30 in cash that she had been carrying when she disappeared. The discovery of Emma's remains provided definitive proof of Mitchell's guilt and allowed forensic experts to confirm details of his confession. The location and condition of the remains were consistent with Mitchell's account of events, and there was no evidence to suggest that anyone else had been involved in Emma's death or the disposal of her body. Emma's parents, David and Lynn Chen, were notified of the discovery immediately. After 25 years of not knowing what had happened to their daughter, they finally had the answers they had been seeking. David and Lynn traveled to Oregon to meet with investigators and learn the details of what had happened to Emma. While the news was devastating, they expressed gratitude for finally knowing the truth and being able to lay their daughter to rest properly. The forensic examination of Emma's remains confirmed that she had died from blunt force trauma to the head, consistent with Mitchell's account of her falling and striking the concrete during their struggle. There was no evidence of sexual assault or other forms of violence beyond what Mitchell had described in his confession. Robert Mitchell was formally charged with second-degree murder in connection with Emma's death. Given the passage of time and the circumstances of the crime, prosecutors determined that second-degree murder was the most appropriate charge, rather than first-degree murder, which would have required proof of premeditation. Mitchell's confession and the physical evidence made it clear that Emma's death had occurred during the commission of an attempted assault, but there was no evidence that Mitchell had planned to kill her. Mitchell's trial began in September 2023, 25 years after Emma's disappearance. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence of Mitchell's guilt, including his DNA on the cigarette butts, his detailed confession, and the discovery of Emma's remains in the location he had described. Mitchell's defense attorney argued for leniency based on his client's cooperation with investigators and his claim that Emma's death had been accidental. However, the prosecution emphasized that Mitchell's actions after Emma's death demonstrated consciousness of guilt and a callous disregard for her family's suffering. Rather than taking responsibility for what had happened, Mitchell had concealed his crime for 25 years and allowed Emma's parents to endure decades of uncertainty and anguish. The trial included emotional testimony from Emma's family members, friends, and professors, who described the impact that her loss had had on their lives. David and Lynn Chen testified about the pain of not knowing what had happened to their daughter and the way that Emma's disappearance had affected every aspect of their lives for the past 25 years. Emma's brother Michael, now a successful biomedical engineer, testified about how his sister's disappearance had motivated his career choices and his commitment to developing medical technologies that could save lives. Michael described Emma as his role model and mentor, and explained how her loss had created a void in his life that could never be filled. Marcus Thompson, Emma's former boyfriend who had gone on to become a pediatric surgeon as Emma had planned to do, testified about Emma's dreams and aspirations. Marcus had never married, explaining that his relationship with Emma had been so meaningful that he had never been able to form another romantic attachment of equal significance. Jessica Williams, Emma's former roommate, testified about Emma's character and the friendship they had shared during their time as college students. Jessica had become a clinical psychologist and had dedicated much of her career to working with families of missing persons, inspired by her experience with Emma's case. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning a guilty verdict on the charge of second-degree murder. The evidence against Mitchell was overwhelming, and his own confession had provided prosecutors with all the proof they needed to secure a conviction. During the sentencing phase of the trial, Mitchell was given the opportunity to address Emma's family directly. He offered what appeared to be a sincere apology for his actions and for the pain he had caused by keeping his crime secret for so many years. Mitchell acknowledged that nothing he could say would bring Emma back or undo the suffering he had caused, but he claimed to be genuinely remorseful for what he had done. However, Emma's family members were not impressed by Mitchell's expressions of remorse, noting that he had had 25 years to come forward and provide them with answers but had chosen to remain silent. Chen addressed Mitchell directly during the sentencing hearing, telling him that his apology was meaningless after decades of allowing the family to suffer without knowing the truth. The judge sentenced Robert Mitchell to 25 years to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after serving the minimum sentence. Given Mitchell's age of 59 at the time of sentencing, it was likely that he would spend the rest of his life in prison. The judge noted that while Emma's death may have been unplanned, Mitchell's decision to conceal his crime and allow her family to suffer demonstrated a profound lack of moral character that warranted a severe sentence. Emma's family held a memorial service at Pacific Northwest University in May 2023, finally able to lay their daughter to rest after 25 years of uncertainty. The service was attended by hundreds of people, including Emma's former classmates, professors, and friends, as well as members of the law enforcement community who had worked on her case over the years. The university planted a tree in Emma's memory near the pre-medical building where she had spent so much time studying and conducting research. A plaque was installed at the base of the tree, describing Emma's achievements and her dreams of becoming a pediatric surgeon to help children in need. David and Lynn Chen established the Emma Chen Memorial Scholarship Fund, which provides financial assistance to pre-medical students from immigrant families who demonstrate academic excellence and a commitment to serving others. The scholarship ensures that Emma's memory will continue to inspire future generations of students who share her background and aspirations. Dr. Amanda Rivera's work on Emma's case led to the expansion of the Oregon State Police Cold Case Unit and increased funding for genetic genealogy investigations. The success in solving Emma's case after 25 years demonstrated the potential for these new technologies to provide closure to families of missing persons and victims of unsolved crimes. Detective Brian Kowalski, who had originally investigated Emma's disappearance and had never forgotten her case, attended Emma's memorial service. Now 75 years old and long retired, Kowalski expressed satisfaction that Emma's case had finally been solved, even though it had taken decades longer than anyone had hoped. He noted that advances in DNA technology had made possible what had been impossible during his active years as an investigator. The resolution of Emma's case also had broader implications for cold case investigations across the country. Law enforcement agencies began investing more resources in genetic genealogy programs, recognizing the potential for these techniques to solve cases that had previously seemed hopeless. Emma's case became a model for how persistent investigation combined with advancing technology could provide answers to families who had been waiting for decades. Emma's story also highlighted the importance of never giving up on missing person cases, no matter how much time has passed. Her parents' refusal to stop hoping for answers, combined with the dedication of investigators like Dr. Rivera, ultimately led to the resolution of a case that had seemed unsolvable for 25 years. The case also demonstrated the power of DNA evidence and genetic genealogy in solving crimes where traditional investigative methods had been exhausted. The cigarette butts that had seemed like minor evidence in 1998 became the key to solving Emma's case in 2023, showing how evidence that appears insignificant at the time can become crucial with advances in technology. Emma Chen's case serves as a reminder of the human cost of violent crime and the lasting impact that such crimes have on families and communities. Emma was a young woman with unlimited potential who had worked hard to overcome the challenges faced by her immigrant family and was on the verge of achieving her dreams of becoming a doctor. Her death not only ended her own promising life but also devastated her family and deprived society of the contributions she would have made as a pediatric surgeon. The ripple effects of her loss were felt by everyone who knew her, from her parents and brother to her friends, professors, and fellow students who had been inspired by her dedication and compassion. The 25-year delay in solving Emma's case also highlighted the secondary trauma experienced by families of missing persons, who must live with uncertainty and unanswered questions for years or even decades. David and Lynn Chen aged significantly during the years they spent not knowing what had happened to their daughter, and the stress of Emma's disappearance affected every aspect of their lives. However, the eventual resolution of Emma's case also demonstrated the importance of persistence and hope in the face of seemingly insurmountable challenges. Emma's family never gave up believing that they would eventually learn the truth, and their faith was ultimately vindicated by advances in investigative technology and the dedication of law enforcement professionals. Emma Chen would be 44 years old today if she had lived. She would likely have completed medical school and her residency training, and might well have achieved her dream of becoming a pediatric surgeon. She might have had a family of her own and would certainly have continued to make positive contributions to her community and to the field of medicine. While Emma's life was tragically cut short, her memory continues to inspire others through the scholarship fund established in her name and the impact her case has had on cold case investigations. The resolution of her case has provided closure to her family and has demonstrated that justice can be achieved even decades after a crime has been committed. The advances in DNA technology and genetic genealogy that led to solving Emma's case offer hope to the families of the more than 100,000 people who are currently missing in the United States. Many of these cases may eventually be solved using similar techniques, providing answers and closure to families who have been waiting for years or decades to learn the truth about their missing loved ones. Emma's case also serves as an important reminder about campus safety and the need for continued vigilance in protecting students from violence. While Emma's encounter with Robert Mitchell was random and unpredictable, her case highlights the importance of security measures, lighting, surveillance systems, and other precautions that can help prevent similar tragedies. The resolution of Emma Chen's case after 25 years represents both an ending and a beginning. It provides closure for her family and friends, but it also opens new possibilities for solving other cold cases and bringing justice to victims of unsolved crimes. Emma's legacy lives on not only through the scholarship fund established in her memory but also through the advances in investigative technology that her case helped to demonstrate and promote. Most importantly, Emma's story reminds us of the value of every human life and the importance of never giving up in the pursuit of truth and justice. Her memory serves as an inspiration to law enforcement professionals, forensic scientists, and advocates for missing persons who continue to work tirelessly to provide answers to families who are still waiting to learn the truth about their missing loved ones. No memory of being in the area where the cigarette butts were found and suggested that the DNA evidence must be the result of contamination or laboratory error. However, when confronted with the strength of the DNA evidence and the implausibility of his explanations, Mitchell eventually broke down and confessed to his involvement in Emma's disappearance. According to Mitchell's confession, he had been working the evening shift on October 15, 1998, repairing a broken streetlight near the intersection of University Avenue and College Street. This location was directly adjacent to the second security camera that had failed to capture Emma's image. Mitchell admitted that he had intentionally disabled the security camera to prevent his supervisors from seeing him smoking marijuana during his work shift. Mitchell's confession revealed that his encounter with Emma had been entirely random and unplanned. Emma had been walking along University Avenue toward Tony's Pizza when she passed the area where Mitchell was working. According to Mitchell, he had been smoking marijuana and drinking beer while working, despite being on duty. When Emma walked by, Mitchell attempted to engage her in conversation and ask her for her phone number. Emma had politely declined Mitchell's advances and continued walking toward her destination. However, Mitchell, who was intoxicated and had a history of aggressive behavior toward women, decided to follow Emma and continue pursuing her despite her clear lack of interest. Mitchell claimed that he had only intended to convince Emma to go out with him and had not planned to harm her. According to Mitchell's account, Emma became increasingly uncomfortable with his persistent attention and eventually told him firmly to leave her alone. This rejection angered Mitchell, who grabbed Emma's arm to prevent her from walking away. Emma attempted to defend herself and struck Mitchell in the face, causing him to lose his temper completely. Mitchell's confession described a brief but violent struggle in which Emma fought desperately to escape. Despite her efforts, Mitchell was larger and stronger than Emma and was able to overpower her. During the struggle, Emma fell and struck her head on the concrete sidewalk, suffering a traumatic brain injury that rendered her unconscious.